Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Continuing on with Larry's collection. If you missed part 1, check that out right here. But this is so beautiful, Larry. I didn't realize it till after you left. Larry starts with L, and he dropped off the family of solid body L guitars. That's right, we're talking about weird 70s stuff again today. So let's go ahead and get this first one open. Inside here sleeps something that was, not necessarily a student model, but not necessarily ultra high end. It was just kind of somewhere in between. This is an L6S. Now, this is one of the more deluxe versions because we've got a little bit to talk about here. So, the L6S was first introduced in 1973, thereabouts. And while yes, they kind of just look like flattened pancake Les Pauls, I mean, that's not exactly what they're going for here. They're actually a lot thinner than a Les Paul, and they've got way different tones because we have the then new Bill Lawrence electronics in here. He designed the pickups for these things. They do not have any type of pull piece on them. And even if Larry wanted me to take this thing apart to document it, I would tell him no. I'm not gonna do it because these pickups have really, really tiny little thin wires coming out of them. And if you accidentally touch this pickup wrong, they break and then you're out of luck because these are epoxy coated on the back. So it's very, very difficult to fix one of those pickups. So don't take them apart unless you really absolutely have to. And if you do, be very, very careful. You could check out this video. I was telling you that same spiel and I still broke the darn pickup. But when first introduced, this was just called the L6S. After a few years, they introduced a few different models, and they renamed this one the Custom, so it's the highest end version. But there's also the L6S Deluxe out there. That is a string-through version. The pickguard's a little bit pointier, but the pickups are about the same despite having a different type of pickup ring around them. So that's your Custom and Deluxe, but then there was another one that is a bolt-on variety called the Midnight Special L6. Doesn't technically have the S within its title. So when these first came out, generally you'd find most of them in like a natural finish, but this one, according to our serial number, is the 45th day of 1978. And that's when you can start to find some interesting variations on these. So L6Ss, you can find them in a lot of different colors. There's really nice true tobacco sunbursts like this one. I mean, this is a phenomenal example, Larry. There's like a cherry sunburst. Then of course there's your naturals. I believe you can find wine red. There's black ones. Within the Midnight Special, you can actually find a cream sparkle and one other sparkle finish here that you can see on the screen. But something else fascinating about the L6S family is you can find these in every fretboard combination possible that Gibson uses anyways. You can find them with maple fretboards, you can find them with rosewood fretboards, and a select few nice ones get ebony, like this one. That's why when I opened the case on this one, not only did the finish impress me, but the ebony fretboard was cool. And the first 200 or so of these things made actually have block inlays. I've documented one of those too if you want to see it. But they're kind of interesting neck profiles. This one's very rounded, but still kind of small feeling this way. But then they kind of chunk up a little bit. It's got a nice contoured flat body. You got a little comfort cut. I'm not going to lie to you and say like they're the absolute best guitars out there, but they're pretty nice. Generally on the used market, something this nice would probably fetch in the 2,000-ish range, but you can find cheaper ones in the 1,000 to 1,500 one. And it's a miracle. This one still has the original case. A lot of times people will either lose these cases or want to keep them for themselves or something. But this one, just on a quick glance, appears to be all original, except for we're missing maybe one screw on the truss rod cover. But before we continue on unboxing today, we have a word from our sponsor, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is the premier place to buy new gear and accessories, ranging from brand new instruments that you can pick your own serial number, flame top, all that other good stuff, all the way down to picks, strings, got some audio interfaces, pretty much anything you could need, they can ship out to you really quickly. And hey, they also do monthly giveaways. You can check that link in the description if you want to sign up for those. Thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring tonight's episode. Let's get back to the unboxing. But now, let's count down from the L6S. I believe these came about around the same time, I think about 1 year later. This is called the L5S. Now, we just did a full review and documentation of one of these that had a very cool, rare one-piece top. Now, this one... Okay, he showed it to me before I unboxed it, so you're not getting my true first impressions. It might be a two-piecer, which is still very good. These things are known for having multiple piece tops, so collectors want two pieces and the few rare one-piecers. But yeah, that's a top on that one. So when Larry bought this, he said the seller told him that this was made with the Les Paul wood, which you can check out this review if you need to learn more about those. That is the most expensive guitar at that point in time. Now, when the L5S was first introduced, at that point in time, this was the highest end, but it was quickly dethroned by those guys. But the L5S had a pretty darn good run until 1976. They were expensive, basically true solid body versions of an L5, which is a super high-end archtop guitar. But what makes these a little bit different from an L6S is the fact that they have more of a wedged shaped body. And I never knew this until I held one in my hands. I just always thought they were kind of weird, goofy looking, super bound type things. But they start off really thick in this area, and then they taper down to be very slim by the very end. So you almost get to L6S territory by the time you're right here, but then it's like just big and chunky up here for some reason. I'm not sure why they decided to do that. But that top is just extremely figured. Like, it's almost to the point where it's so figured, unless you have like really nice lighting on it, it doesn't quite move. But then when you get the light there, that's a very nice 3D top. I would tend to believe that, yeah, that looks very similar to the Les Pauls I've had. In fact, I think I like the back even better because it moves even more so in the light. Now, generally, you know, bright cherry sunburst, it's not my favorite color out there, but it works for this guitar. It does. So this is one of his players that he loves, so he's swapped out the pickups. He didn't like the tarbacks that were in here. That piqued my interest because I need a set for my one-piece top collector one. But he said he sold it to somebody for his 2550. But hey, man, whoever bought those pickups, those are not right for your 2550. They don't have the double leads. You can't coil split with that. You need to sell those to me. But just like the other one I had documented, this has the L5S tailpiece. It's the more preferred version, but you can find these in a few different things. But it appears, just like mine, somebody has swapped out the Seal Fast style tuners on here. But this one was also made in 1976. It looks like we got some pretty old Grovers on here too, the star logoed ones. The neck's got some nice figuring on it as well. So yeah, absolutely fantastic example of an L5S. He said this was his dream guitar. And I've got to agree, as far as these things go, this is absolute stunner. Just imagine, guys, if this had the same finish as his Supreme in the last episode, like if it had faded a little bit, that would just be even more so over the top. But cool guitar, Larry. Thanks for sharing that with us. So we went L6S, L5S, but did you know there's actually something called the L4S? Now, until Larry started to talk to me about his guitars, I never even put two and two together that, oh, this weird freaky thing that they only made very few of belongs within that family. So isn't it great that we can have all three right here? So let's check this beast out. Those things are like all maple for the most part. This one takes things to a little bit of a new extreme. It's all mahogany. So he pulled this thing out of the case and he immediately told me this is more of a player's grade guitar, but since there were so few of these things made in the early 2000s, he just had to snap it up. So if you own the prototype of this one, he's looking for that. Contact me, I'll put him in contact with you because I think it deserves to be in his collection. But as soon as I took this thing out of the case, I kind of fell in love with it. It feels good. If I remember correctly, I think I was trying to buy this guitar too when it first came up because it was just a little bit goofy, but I think that was like two, maybe 3 years ago. But this thing is made out of all mahogany, and it's more so like an L6S in its design, except for we have binding and it's more of a Florentine cutaway, not quite as sharp as a Florentine, but more similar to that. But it's made of straight mahogany right here. So it's got the nice comfort carve right here. The neck just feels right. But yeah, the L4S was kind of a shortly lived thing. I would assume it's based on L4. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about those things, and it's just a solid body version of that. But we've got the cool split parallelogram inlays here. I always associate those with like a Gibson Dove, but you also have them on like the double neck EDS 1275s. But check out the pickups. We've got custom engraving on here. It says Gibson Limited Edition. So far, I think Larry said he saw 3 other ones out there. There's a really cool like tobacco sunburst one. So how many did they make? I don't know. This one dates from 2004. It's got at least, yeah, I would say 3 sets of tuners on it. Currently, it's on like a locking Schaller style. But you even have dancing within the mahogany. So that's what I really liked about this thing. And get this, even on the back, So even though it's like a solid body, not necessarily ultra fancy, at least it has really high grade mahogany in that aspect. The only thing it's missing is a black stinger. I think that would really complete the look of this rare beast. But interestingly enough, only a master volume and a master tone 3-way toggle switch. And now get this, I'm glad he pointed it out. Freaky output jack alert. So it's one of those long barrel style ones that's just kind of sank into the side instead of being flush right here. And that looks factory to me because you don't have any like exposed holes right there. So as you're sitting down playing at jazz style, it's just going to stick out this way instead of going that way. Maybe it would just make it look more uniform. And hey, if anybody happens to have a spare L4S case out there, he's looking. This is an early 90s case. That's why he has this in here. But this one has a body more so like the L6S, where it's completely uniform for the most part outside of the comfort cut. So only the L5S is that weird wedge-shaped guitar outside of the Corvus and Futura that I know about. But he's got one of those Stumac roller bridges on here as well. So let's see. L6, 5, and 4 family here. Very fitting to be owned by a guy whose name also starts with an L. But now we need to take a look at something that doesn't necessarily fit the theme, but it's close enough. I was surprised when he took this thing out of the case. I've heard of these things. It's a Pat Martino Gibson signature guitar. It's got a freaky snakehead stock that we'll see, but we've documented that a few times on my double cut Les Paul Freak custom shop guitars. You can check them out here. But the feeling of this really surprised me on top of the way this thing looks. So it's kind of like the L4S that we just looked at as far as the body goes and having the Florentine cutaway. This one maybe a little bit more pronounced, but it's got this nice like a light brown root beer like finish to it. And the flame figuring just dances and changes the color from light brown to dark brown. It's a nice looker. But then when we flip it over to the back, you can see it's a nice piece of mahogany back here. So when I saw these things online, I always thought they were going to be similar to the solid bodied families, but they're not. I mean, they look about the same. They're just a tad bit thicker, and they actually chamber these things out. So I believe this to be like a true maple top, and then they just take this mahogany body and they kind of chamber it out. So it actually kind of still feels like a semi-hollow in that aspect. It's got the F-holes. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it pretty much is a semi-hollow. But it's got the fancy pick guard just like his BB King Lucille has. He put that tape right there because he didn't want the gold to accidentally wear off. Not a bad idea. But this thing is so light, I thought they were going to be heavy. But he says this is his absolute favorite guitar in his entire collection that he loves to play the most. I can definitely understand why. It's got a very good feel to it. And he also likes the ebony fretboard. So I told him, hey, you'd probably like the Mummy. He's like, yes, that's the one guitar that you own that I must have. But he swapped out our truss rod cover right here just to match the pick guard. I mean, that looks pretty nice. But yeah, here's that weird snakehead stock. This was kind of a shortly lived mid-90s style type thing where the whole idea is you're supposed to get straight string pull, and that's going to give you better tuning stability. Pat Martino loved that. He put it on his signatures, and you can find them on those double cuts that we were talking about earlier. This one appears to be a 2011 custom shop. So the snakehead stock lives on longer than the 90s with this model. Wow. I thought this was a slightly older guitar. But no, you've got the newer Gibson custom style logo on there. That's weird to see because all the other ones I've seen have the older version. I'll definitely have to pick one of these things up again now that I felt one. Like, wow. This thing feels like a really nice guitar. It's very slick and it's got some cool woods to it. And hey, who doesn't like 3-ply binding around the body? So that's going to wrap things up with Larry's collection. If you would like to see your collection get uncased on the show, and you are local to the Northwest Ohio area, or you're willing to drive and give me a couple hours to a day or so to film the episode, feel free to reach out. Generally, I don't like people shipping guitars in because the shipping process is hard on guitars, and if something goes wrong in that process, I would feel bad that one of your guitars got damaged. You don't have to want to sell your stuff. I would actually prefer it if you don't want to sell them because it's always fun to document other people's keepers. I'm just one guy. I can show you guys so much. So it was great to see a really cool collection of guitars here today. So everybody say thank you to Larry for sharing his guitars with us. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.